Good morning.
Doručak je bio dobar.
The breakfast was good, obviously. Coffee, we're talking, but it's time to start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Krunoslav Katic, and I will be your moderator of this first morning session on the topic of And now, how to introduce our today's keynote speaker, yesterday's moderator, when you already know her very well. Mrs. Sandra Nedeljković is Deputy Director of the Public Investment Management Office of the Government of the Republic of Serbia. Academic background in international relationships, Master in Public Administration, Local Self-Government and Public Policies. She is a person you probably met at one point or seen at one point after the 2014 floods when she joined the work of the Flood Relief Office, as the office was called back then. From then, Mrs. Nedeljković is involved in working on improving and reform of the system for disaster risk management in the Republic of Serbia. Without false flattering, I see her as operational part of the civil protection in Serbia. For the end, I will say that if we had more Sandra Nedeljković, it would be very much easier for us for DRR in Serbia and in the entire Balkans. Sandra, the floor is yours. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for such wonderful words. Maybe because I'm the only female in this process, there's very few women working on this topic, so that's why maybe I'm so recognizable in this work that the Republic of Serbia is doing since 2014 and everything that we've done in these 3.5 years. This is not just thanks to me, but thanks to all my colleagues, primarily the Public Investment Management Office and the colleagues from other line ministries as well, and the colleagues from the local self-government. We just managed to connect everything in the system. Because before we appeared, before this I worked in the Ministry of Public Administration and Local Self-Government. I had experience with the local self-governments, and we realized that there are capacities in the system in the Republic of Serbia. It's not true that we do not have people, that we do not have experts. We do have them. We have really good experts, but somehow this system was disjointed, probably because in the past 30 years they didn't work actively on prevention, probably because in the past 30 years we neglected the system of civil protection which used to exist in former Yugoslavia. So these were lonely stakeholders who were trying to work on something, but when you do not have an integrated system, then this is really much more difficult. These changes these changes were triggered by floods. Flood was the trigger for something to change in our country. And of course, it was a bad occasion, but we are glad that we continue to work on this process. And what the Republic of Serbia has done, first, we have established a system of recovery after the natural disaster. So now we have a loan recovery, not just recovery after floods, but recovery after any disaster, any natural disaster, or a hazard that could affect our country. And we have an institution dealing with this. We have the institutional and the legal system governing this area. The process of recovery is the third in line in this part. In the disaster risk management, we have first prevention, preparedness, then response in an emergency, and only after that we have the process of recovery. So somehow we went from the bottom. So that was the situation. That's how we managed to govern this process. This was established on the practice that we had in 2014. The law, so that was actually adopted in 2015, was actually our experience that we had in the process of recovery and in practice, and what we've actually saw that doesn't work in our country. In addition to this law, the Republic of Serbia also adopted the national program for DRM, and it was adopted only 7 months after the flood, so by the end of 2014, and in the beginning of this year, the government of the Republic of Serbia adopted action plan for implementing this program. So we can say that we implemented indicators of the Sendai framework for DRM, so that the countries by 2020 should have strategic documents for the DRR. So the Republic of Serbia has this. In addition to these two documents, we also have a program for financing risk from natural disasters. We talked about this yesterday. So this strategic framework has been done, has been made. But what we need to do further, this is just the beginning. Our job is not done. This is just the beginning. Now we have to implement all of those things that we envisaged. We need to implement this. Right now we have a public debate. You heard this about yesterday, about the law on the risk reduction. So with this law, we will have a legal framework, the legal framework established in the Republic of Serbia about this topic. But what's interesting, what I always like to highlight, when we were creating these documents, weren't done in four walls by one team, one group of people to write this. This was really an integrated approach, not just by all the colleagues from the line ministries, but also with the support from the Standing Conference of the cities and municipalities, support from the colleagues from the local level, because we can write the strategies, plans, and programs and laws, but if they cannot be implemented on the local level, if we do not have enough capacities to implement this, it doesn't depend only on the capacities, it depends on our mentality as well, how we are used to doing things. Then all those laws and all those documents will just remain letters on paper and be put somewhere on shelves without implementation. That's why it's important that all of us participate in this process, all levels of government. I talked about this yesterday, from the national to the local level of government. And first of all, the entire society needs to participate, the academia, the NGO sector, and active participation of all citizens. That's the only way that we can manage to, only this way we will be more resilient to future natural disasters. Just like we're talking about the levels of governments, institutions, we can also say something about local self-governments, natural disasters. We know all very well. They do not have administrative borders. They never hit just one city, one municipality, or just one country. They are always regionally focused. That's why joining in the region and joining within one country is extremely necessary. So we have good examples in the Republic of Serbia. We heard now what Croatia has done about this in Serbia. It's a bit different. Concept is a bit different, but at the end we all have the same goal. We successfully managed to connect cities and municipalities in the Western Morava Basin and the Kolubara River Basin. We have a protocol on inter-municipality cooperation, and the objective of this protocol is to implement all those objectives, results, activities which are written in the national program and in the action plan, and which will be implemented on the local level. Integrated action is not just better, but all the funds that will be joined and blended are more cost-effective, cheaper, and have much better effect when this is all done jointly. So once again, to thank the organizers for organizing this meeting, actually, and this is a topic that should not be forgotten. We constantly need to work on this topic. We should not wait for the natural disaster to happen before it gets into focus of public, but we should work on prevention, we should work on education, informing about the risks that our country and countries in the regions have. We should work on this constantly. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Sandra. I now invite Sandra and all other speakers, including Mr. Mladenovic, Ms. Nadzinska, Ms. Jaholari, and Mr. Maksimovic to join us here for the panel. We now move on to the more interesting part. Let me note that again today we are well gender balanced, just like we should be. There is something that UNDP says we always should be a panel, not a manel only of men being overrepresented. Our next speaker will be Mr. Andrej Mladenovic, Deputy Mayor of the city of Belgrade for many years, active in politics with excellent organizational capacities. Speaking of disasters, there is an important issue of social vulnerability and vulnerable groups, more sensitive to disasters, and in this respect, Mr. Mladenovic's experience in working with the youth, refugees, on social issues and relations with religious communities will be very important to hear from him and to ask him to share with us. Ladies and gentlemen, good day. The city of Belgrade, as you have heard, as the capital of Serbia, of course, within our structure of local governments in Serbia, operates and is established as the capital by the law on the capital city. There is also the law of local self-government, and in line with these two laws, we operate as a unit of local government consisting of 17 city municipalities, and as a capital, it operates under a complex structure because we don't all have the same issues and challenges, and they are not recognized by relevant laws necessarily. But as we develop this topic, we will have things better regulated. As for resilience, I will start with 2014, as Ms. Nedeljković mentioned, as a key turning point. At that time, we challenged truly a disaster. One of the city municipalities, Obrenovac, was fully flooded, especially the center of the municipality. It is quite a big municipality with almost 30 sub-municipal units. And in that year, 2014, a month before the flooding, we had elections and the transfer of government, which certainly caused a different set of issues, because every time with the change of government, there is change in the functioning, in the structure, organization, authorities, and it takes some time, of some months, to have all of this settled down. So this was the situation in 2014 in the city of Belgrade, that at that time we didn't have the necessary legal acts on civil protection, emergency situations, and for this reason we were left on our own to do with much improvisation and finding our way through it. So this was a situation, I think, for many other local governments, with some changes, of course, and differences. Some municipalities did have some acts adopted by their assemblies, but this was not the case in Belgrade. And we realized, after the disaster hit in 2014, that we need, first of all, to build the institutional framework, to build the fundamentals and the foundations, to delegate roles, and to know who is doing what and who is in charge of and responsible for what in cases of emergencies or disasters. Thus, I think we did a lot of work in the past 3 years, but the question of this session is why are local communities so vulnerable, and what it is that local governments make resilience needed and how it can be done better. Local governments, cities and municipalities are the first when it comes to things affecting citizens. With any problem, it is always the local government where individual citizens will go, ask for assistance, ask for advice, or find some shelter. Local governments, as such, need to be the first one prepared to provide this kind of protection and assistance as a first responder. So we need to work in a systemic manner, create a space, so to say, whereby local governments will not only have tasks and competences, but will have also resourcing, training, HR, equipment, which will make them prepared to respond to situations of this kind. The city of Belgrade did a lot in this respect since 2014, and I will try briefly to mention some of this work in order to give you a clear picture of how it was before this turning point and how it is now. And maybe this will illustrate why such an institutional framework is needed in all communities to bring together all the strategies, plans and laws of the city, but also of the region, country, and beyond borders. We've adopted 5 decisions by our city municipalities, a number of decisions by the mayor and the city headquarters for emergencies, and we've adjusted the structures responding in emergencies. So we've given tasks, responsibilities to certain departments. And I need to note that in Serbia, I don't know how it is in other ex-Yugoslav republics, but in Serbia, we managed in the 90s to abandon quite a good civil protection system, which was actually a model and an example in Europe at that time. I don't want to idealize the period that we left in the past, but I do remember that back in the 80s, people would come to Yugoslavia to see our civil protection system. However, in the 90s, we gave up on that system, regretfully, and we started a new era in which this was not regulated either legally or organizationally, and there was a gap at local level, and local governments couldn't respond to this. So this was a significant weakness. We know all that in the former Yugoslavia there were many things good and not so good, but this was certainly one thing that we shouldn't have abandoned. We should have harmonized it to the size of the population, to the size of our territories. If we had done so, I think our problems now would be much lesser, and we would need to invest much less into what has been devastated by past disasters. Equally important for me to say is that we did an acoustic study for the city of Belgrade. It is really for, we call it a siren system, for early warning, for observation purposes. This system, regretfully, was very much used back in the 1999 at the time of NATO campaign. It saved many lives, but after 1990 there was a change in organization, and it was moved from the Ministry of Defense to the Ministry of the Interior. And after the NATO campaign was over, we didn't continue to update and modernize this very important system. So we understood that we need some changes there, and the central government left it to us to maintain this system, whereas it tasked the Ministry of the Interior to supervise and manage the system. So we were neither the managers nor the owners of the system, but we had it to use. So this was not a good situation, but we realized that we need to modernize this system, because in Obrenovac during the floods we had only one siren operational. So we need this for the warning purposes. So this acoustic study was done. We did a vulnerability assessment, a plan of protection and rescue in emergencies for the city of Belgrade. Underway now is the assessment in the 17 city municipalities, so it is a complex system. We are also now upgrading our system of protection, rescue, early warning, and rescue. We expect this to be finalized in 2018, although we've started it back in 2014. 2015, but it takes time because there were weaknesses in the legislation. Time is needed for procurement purposes. I wish that we finalized this before, but as we started from scratch, you need to do so many things, starting with developing terms of reference, inviting tenders, evaluate received bids. So it takes 2 or 3 years to have the basic planning documents in place. Underway is the project of what we call the Situation Center, like a control room in which our colleagues from the sector, Department of Emergency Management, are working. But this center is not sufficiently equipped, and it cannot respond to the needs of a big town like Belgrade. We've done an analysis. We've seen how other cities have arranged their situational centers, and we expect to soon finalize this design, and hopefully there will be resources, including financial resources, to equip and make functional this center. The next thing that is important is training. We've seen back in 2014 that we have people who are ready to respond to emergencies, to all challenges, but also we saw that this was not sufficient and that additional training is needed. New technologies need to be adopted, new procedures in order to have a team that can respond, or team that can respond elsewhere, not only in Serbia or in Belgrade. And in this respect, it should be noted that local governments should comply with standards so that we have some kind of a system across the whole territory. It is not sufficient for one self-government to do a system and then not to have a relevant, harmonized system elsewhere across the country, because in case of emergency, as Ms. Nedeljkovic said, we need to assist each other and we need to even have assistance within the region. Therefore, our units need to be interoperable in a way. Equally important are commissioners for civil protection. I mentioned that we had a good civil protection system. We are now building a new one again. There is a widespread memory, especially among all the generations, of the civil protection system that we used to have. But younger generations are not aware of this, and they need to understand why and how civil protection is their contribution to protection and rescue. And we are aware that we need to work in partnership with ministries, in partnerships with schools, to raise awareness through different pilot projects, and with the Red Cross, for instance, to have young people involved as much as possible in the system of civil protection, training, preparedness, and so on. This process will certainly take time, and without a centralized approach, it will be very difficult to come up with the specific outcomes. As I said, it needs to be part of school curricula. We need the Ministry of Education for this, the Ministry of Defense. And these initiatives coming from different ministries in recent months are very good, and Belgrade is prepared to work with the school system in Serbia and become involved in this. Another important thing to notice is that when it comes to climate change, we've adopted climate change adaptation action plan. It is a very good one, I think. Maybe we didn't promote it sufficiently. Maybe the general public in Serbia and specifically in Belgrade is not sufficiently informed about the details, but we are very proud to have adopted it, and I hope that with our colleagues in other municipalities across Serbia, we will work together to have them in place in all units and to harmonize them with the policies of the Ministry of the Environment. So we expect progress also in this respect. Some other plans are currently being developed, including the fire protection plan and so on. So what we are trying to do is to have a whole set of plans that will be important for our operation in the future. As for international cooperation, Belgrade has been very active. We've applied after 2014 and we were shortlisted among 100 resilient cities funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, with the biggest cities globally. These are quite specific programs, but we are implementing this city resilience comprehensive program, and we think it will be valuable in the coming period because through it also we will have an opportunity to learn from other big cities, and I suggest to my colleagues from other local governments to apply and to try to join a community of this kind because it can only be of benefit. With the Lazio region, we've had a number of exchange visits, and we are trying to learn their model and to use it here in Belgrade when it comes to hydrology, for instance. You know that the Lazio region was affected both by flooding and by earthquakes, and their civil protection was modeled after ours, in fact. So it was good for us to see the emergency control room, the situational center. We cooperate with other international organizations. UNDP, of course, is prominent in that respect, our key partner with whom we implement different projects. And I believe that this kind of cooperation will be actually an example and a model for other local governments. And coming to the end of my remarks, I would say that it is very important that from the national level we need both vertical and horizontal cooperation. Belgrade, of course, as capital city, is specific. We must note that without any wish to belittle the complexities of other local governments, but most of the critical infrastructure is located in Serbia. This is the case of other major cities in Europe. In some other places, there would be some dispersal of these functions, but in Europe it is as it is, and we expect that working together with the government of Serbia, we will come up with relevant solutions when it comes to the command of the civil protection system. It will be arranged in line with the standards and models of Europe. We've also established cooperation with the Serbian-Russian Emergency Center. Our staff has gone there to Russia, to St. Petersburg for training. Also, we've done this with Switzerland, and I hope that there will be opportunities to organize training and to have some equipment for the training center. So we expect this cooperation to continue, hoping that in 2018 we will have all the documents and policies in place, both for the situational center and for the early warning system, that we will have our general purpose civil protection units equipped, that we will have all the commissioners in place. I don't mean to say that this will be everything, that this will be completely sufficient. You can never be completely prepared to respond to all the challenges of the future, but we just cannot stand still, and therefore every investment in this field pays back many times. We are working with Sandra and her team in order to be prepared to respond in the future to the challenges ahead of us. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mladenovic. I'm sure that people of Belgrade will have questions for Mr. Mladenovic. After the experiences of the city of Belgrade, we move through a different view through the prism of environmental protection. Our next speaker is Mrs. Liliana Ojevska-Nadzinska, Deputy Head of the Sector for Environmental Protection of the city of Skopje of the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. In presenting her work, I have the best way to present her is to list her vast experience. So, more than 30 years of work in environmental protection. Member of Intersectoral Group for Protection of Air on the national level. Man of the Committee for Health and Environment. Member of the National Committee for Climate Changes. I think that I've said enough. So please, Mrs. Ojevska-Nadzinska, please present your, share your long years of experience in environmental protection with us. The floor is yours. Allow me first to greet you on behalf of the city of Skopje. I will take the right to greet you on behalf of them and on behalf of all the colleagues who work in this area. I'm extremely pleased to be here because I have the opportunity to hear some other experiences from our region. And primarily my goal in this session, today's session, is to say something about the project that the city administration is developing together with UNDP in Macedonia, and which concerns urban resilience, precisely for the city of Skopje, but within one regional project. First, I would like to say something instigated by a colleague from Montenegro. I come from Macedonia, but I was born in Belgrade, and I lived here until the age of 8. And then my family, father, mother, sister, and I moved to Skopje 2 weeks before the disastrous earthquake in 1963, which destroyed the city. So at the age of 8, I was a witness of a disaster, of all the consequences and of everything that was happening, relief from the entire Yugoslavian community and countries from all over the world when Skopje became a city of solidarity. So somehow this was all connected with today's conference. So I would also like to highlight one thing. We're all trying here to say that we should unify risks and work on risks and consequences of all disasters and climate changes. Take everything under one umbrella and then resolve the problems on the local and the national level. I would like to add and support yesterday's panelist. I don't see him here, who said that the environmental protection and nature is extremely connected with all of this, and I believe that everything I will say from the aspect of somebody who's been working in environmental protection all of our lives, and everything we've done is extremely interlinked. And it doesn't matter that I am not a representative of some other sectors in the city or institutions who work directly on risks and rescue. But that's why I have my lovely colleague Gordana here from the Center for Risk Management in Skopje, who could also say a lot about this topic and add something for the questions I get. Now I would like to say and start from the first question. Why are cities susceptible to Why are cities vulnerable when it comes to climate changes and disasters? Well, in the cities and in those small areas, you have high concentration of people, constructed buildings, infrastructure. People cannot live with them, and this infrastructure is always destroyed during the disaster. This is what makes cities vulnerable, and the cities also cause climate changes and some technological disasters, regardless of whether they are human caused or caused by the nature. This means that everything is happening in the local environment. All the problems, causes, consequences. That's why we should find the answers to those questions there as well. And the answers could be some precaution measures, adapting, protection, and rescue. I would like to say something about Skopje and about our problems in Skopje. Skopje is an implementer of the economic development of Macedonia. Just by that, all the other cities in the country are in the unequal position who are just come down to surviving. But the role of Skopje, the place of Skopje is actually making Skopje. Skopje has become a catalyst of inequality between the people in the city. And when it comes to big ecological degradation, we have huge daily migrations with 50,000 vehicles entering the city per day. We have ecological footprint. I'm embarrassed to say, but I will say that our ecological footprint is 8.1 global hectares per capita, which is huge. Deutsche Welle recently published that the new climatic index German watch established that Macedonia is number 8 in the world in 2016 based on the vulnerability from climate changes, which is devastating. The causes, we took into account two events. First was the cold wave that hit Eastern Europe in 2016 in winter, and which caused the temperatures below minus 20 this winter in Macedonia. And the second one is the flood in the city of Skopje that took 21 lives and damaged 70% of facilities. We have some concrete specific problems. Poor urbanization that doesn't take into account natural conditions and the needs of people. The source of financing for the municipalities in Macedonia is primarily this urbanization. Municipalities adopt their detailed urban planning, but only taking into account the wishes of the investors for the profit. Everything else is left aside, which is creating consequences. We have traffic congestion, which is not normal. I live 6 kilometers from where I live. In the morning, it takes me 10 to 12 minutes to come to work. In the afternoon, when I have to return home by car, it takes me 45 minutes. If it's raining, it's turning into an hour, which is also a huge problem for the functioning of the city. Air pollution is huge, enormous, especially during winter when we have heating in the city. We have a high level of underground waters. We have hazards from floods. I would like to say something about this. In 1962, 1 year before this disastrous earthquake, we had a disastrous flood in Skopje. And after that, we did regulation of the river Varda that goes through the entire city. But lately, in the past several years, things haven't been improved. They even became worse. Facilities were constructed, structures were constructed on the riverbank, even on the river bed. We even had some concrete boats, restaurants on the river. This was all forbidden. But when we reacted, 10 days after our reaction, the article of the law was abolished, and we couldn't regulate this. I mean, you can imagine how crazy this decision was. Then when it comes to underground waters, these buildings that were created, public institutions near the river Vardar in 2015, because of the increased level of the water, they were flooded, and in the basement facilities were flooded where the archives were stored. Then we have hazards from earthquakes. We mentioned this, and we have, after the disastrous earthquake, we have this Institute for Earthquake Engineering and Seismology, which is a scientific institution, world-renowned, where master and PhD theses were defended by global experts in this area. In the past 10 or more years, the facilities that were built are not required to be seismically controlled. Nobody's doing this. Now, under pressure from the public, this has been established again. But we had a break in this urban expansion where we have too many facilities which were not controlled. We have long periods with high precipitation and droughts. We have presence of industrial capacities as well, which are a potential industrial hazards. We have erosion, floods, and landslides in the area of the city. As an example, the mountain Vodno, whose slopes are on the outskirts of the city, and this mountain was creating problems after each high precipitation to citizens. But after the World War II, with intensive work on forestation, created a green slope, north slope of the mountain. This is now a protected natural good, protected by the city, but it is urbanized, legally urbanized until the mid altitude, which is unacceptable. This system of drainage that was implemented completely taken over by the citizens who have destroyed it. So we have so many things that I'm even embarrassed to talk about this, but they are a part of our lives. The problems are even bigger when we take into account that people are not responsible in the moral sense, not in the legal, but in the moral. Nobody is interested in the environment, in their surroundings, in the people that they live with. They're all looking after themselves, their personal interests. This is for largest number of people, we can say that this is true. So that's why our activities, we work on raising the public awareness, and how successful we are, we will see later in a future period. But because all of those measures cannot really be successful very quickly. This is not a secret. We have inert administration who is not doing what they are being paid for and what they have a legal obligation to do. But we need something. We need greater dedication to work. We need setting objectives, working tirelessly, and believing in your work in order for all of this to have a good effect, good response, and to get the good products of your work. We have the lack of synergy in the horizontal and vertical level, however much we are interlinked institutionally and as colleagues. And the worst thing, we have politics are being mixed up in all of this. So in this entire situation, we had the idea to cooperate with UNDP, with the colleagues, that we were cooperating when developing some national documents in the area of protection from climate changes. So as a city, we went head first into a regional project called Increasing the Urban Resilience by using the information technologies for disaster risk reduction and climate changes reduction in capitals, so Armenia, Macedonia, and Moldavia. So the city of Skopje participated together with the Center for Disaster Risk Management. This was signed in December 2014. We were satisfied about this. Our expectations were high. Expectations were justified. And we had cooperation. We were still having cooperation with innovative people, hardworking people from UNDP. And this cooperation was very inspirational for us as a local state government. This agreement from December 2014 was expanded in several times, and it is still ongoing, and it will last in the next year. The main objective of the project is to build resilience to disasters and climate changes in vulnerable countries, developing countries, through increasing the institutional capacities, mobilizing knowledge, and transferring the appropriate innovative techniques. 3 components of the project. First, strengthening capacities for development and implementation of integrated plans for disaster risk reduction and for climate changes. Second, developing the concept of smart city solutions for quick urbanization to protect from climate changes. And the third one is better access to information, increasing public awareness about the risk in the urban environment through implementation of the regional and national IT solutions. What have we done so far? What's ongoing and what's ahead of us? First thing, I would like to highlight that the city of Skopje has a risk assessment, assessment for comprehensive risk and hazards done by the Disaster Risk Management Center and adopted by the city of Skopje in 2015. And this is one of the documents, one of the series of documents about this topic. What was done within this project? We defined the structure and content of the integrated plan for urban resilience, Ahead of us is the analysis of the hazard map, updating the vulnerability assessment from all forms of risks and hazards. We created analysis of the existing spatial data in different institutions and about the possibility for flow and exchange information in order to strengthen cooperation. In this regard, to have a review of the available data and suggestions for IT platform for urban resilience. We did GIS services for for residential buildings in order to create a database for vulnerability of those buildings. We did a tactical exercise in one high school in Skopje with more than 650 students and teachers for response in case of emergency and fire, and all relevant institutions were involved. And we created a mobile phone app with the QR codes as the practical demonstrations for 21st century. We did a study model for floods with a pilot model for improving further work. And now we move to my part of work, what I love the most. We created the inventory of greenhouse gases from 2008 to 2012. Now we are updating this for 2013, 14, and 15. We created a strategy for climate changes in Skopje, which covers both mitigation and adaptation to climate changes. We determined in the strategy, determined the potential for mitigation. We created an action plan of specific activities, and we interlinked them with the Sustainable Development Goals. We implemented an innovative tool, Forced Explorer, which we had many workshops where more than 300 citizens used this in these workshops of citizens of different ages and different backgrounds, professional backgrounds, who determined main risks in the city. Those are waters, healthcare, risk management, and increasing the urban resilience. This is what the strategy was focusing on. So in the work of these sectors, we mentioned the sectors of tourism, nature. This strategy is something that we are very proud of, and I would like to show you this strategy. It looks like this. This is a small booklet which covered everything, but in a very nice way, with good design, actually, where you can find everything that the city is facing, everything that we've done, and everything that we need to do in the future. I left outside a couple of copies, so if you're interested, it's in English. Also, I left some USB sticks with the strategy in all three languages, Macedonian, Albanian, and English. And they're all documents, relevant documents based on which we created this strategy. I even have a couple of documents in Albanian, because I saw that we will have guests from who speak Albanian. So if you can take this if you want later, and this is for our moderator. Since we talked about this yesterday, this is a copy for our moderator. I'm sorry for doing this right now, but I would like to reflect now on some other results that we've managed to achieve in some other projects within this project. With our budget, we entered this project. You entered with their own budget, and we did everything that we've already envisaged. They helped us to make it the quality of work. So we did green canister. Second phase is ongoing. The third phase is next. We did a register of wells for commercial activities. We did an action plan for protection for erosion, plan for technological hazard is ongoing. Smart city is a current activity with 4 objectives: smart environment, living in innovation, and governance. And what's very interesting, we created a center for innovation of Skopje. This is a place, this is located in the city, actually, and this is where citizens and citizen associations, where private sector, when all the institutions, everybody who wants to contribute, who has an idea, they can come to the center and elaborate on their idea. And some projects stem from this. For example, Travel Green. This is an interactive tool for choosing transport from point A to point B, where you can see how to reach how much time it will take, and how much of an impact it has on the environment. If you're taking your own car, if you're taking a bus or a bicycle, or walking, what are the conditions for parking, how much money you need for all this. And now on this platform, you also have you can track in real time traffic data and all the problems. This is given by the Center for Automatic Management and Control of Traffic of Skopje. Then we have the Skopje bus hackathon, the tender for optimization of the public transport according to the number of passengers in the public transport line with the most passengers with the software solutions. Then we had the invitations for smart bus stops. These bus station will be made in the city of the center. This is a sustainable bus station providing a large number of services for the people waiting for the buses. Then we had an invitation a different day in Skopje. It was done within a European Week of Mobility, where the city of Skopje participated. Has been participating from 2011 in this initiative, and several times we were among the first 10 cities, and the last year we were in the top 3 cities. So invitation concerned how to spend one day in Skopje, visit the city and the surroundings, but not using a car. But what the city is offering, this is public transport, this is renting bicycles, then electric cars for tourists, for sightseeing, and with using organic food, locally produced organic food. The winning project, the award for the winning project was a foldable bicycle that can be folded, and you can carry it more easily. In a way, take it with yourself in a train or a bus. And we did a short video, which was very well received by citizens and everywhere where it was shown. Then we had climate challenge, invitation for solutions for specific ecological questions. Billboard for cleaning air was the winning project. Now we're starting to produce them. Then we have the project Skopje Breathes. We called it this way because of the problems that we have with heating in the city, which is the biggest catalyst of pollution in the city of Skopje. The survey covered more than 5,000 households who answered 46 questions. So many questions where we received answers to many problems, and we were able to channel some answers to those problems. We did a socioeconomic analysis of households and determination of target groups for focusing different activities. Then we did as a resume of the study for heating, road mapping for reducing the air pollution by heating, and we also did a web page, Skopje is heating, with all the key results presented on the web page. We have a drone for mapping of the heat waves, for the mapping and modeling erosion, for mapping risk from floods. In all of this, institutions were involved, educational institutions for higher education, experts, local experts. This was a good cooperation. Now, what next? What would we like to do next with UNDP? Green roofs, balconies, walls, pillars in the bus station, study for underground waters with an objective to create a plan for managing underground waters, for torrential waters, then the project for protecting the Skopje fortress for erosion, then information raising campaign for incinerating waste, and using inappropriate fuels for heating, then creating a chart of biotopes, then creating a survey of habitats of animals, and expertise for protection of the Rashta source. Whatever we manage to do from this list, if not all, I'm sure that this will be high quality and innovative projects. I would like to say something else, and I will finish with this. Sometimes we should turn to smart minds in the world and see what they are doing. I would like to give you 3 examples, and to say that we found ourselves in those stories. Maybe I'm not being modest, but this is true. First, High Official of UN, Executive Director of UN Habitat, Mr. Joan Claus, on the Global Day of Cities, says that urban governance asks for strong local self-governments to include citizen associations and private sector in joint governance, because the challenges that we are facing are too complex for just one stakeholder. The local governments need to be brave to accept the changes. They shouldn't be afraid of innovation, which means that we need innovative governance and not classical administration in order to achieve our goals. The second example is a famous Chicago Forum for Global Cities. It was said that the future of cities will be designed by digitalization and urbanization, and the cities will have to adapt or they will stagnate by facing three main issues: migration, which will be increasing through decades, even without the policies in infrastructure to absorb new incomings, can turn cities into urban jungles. This will depend. They will depend on the energy. The energy will need to be sustainable, and the effects of new digital technologies and the apps will revolutionize the functioning and organization of cities. And in the end, Richard Dobson, authority for climate changes, paraphrased Charles Darwin and said, "The strongest cities will not survive, but those cities who could adapt in the best way to the changes." And I really believe that we mentioned some of the, I think that we've managed to implement some of the things that those smart people said, and I'm glad to be a part of this story. So just a couple of more minutes, a minute or two, I apologize. Just one more minute. Yesterday we mentioned financing. If you allow me, a city, a local self-government must have a budget for its problems. You cannot wait for somebody to give you money, for somebody to give you technical solutions and expert solutions. You have to work on something and somebody else can just help you. The struggle for the budget, for environmental budget is huge. From 1985 until now, we were characterized as a sector of peoples who are making decisions about fog and wind. Then peoples in high positions told us to let this go and to start working on some specific issues, not to talk about those stupid things. And now we've reached this piece of data, this official data within the Macedonia's reporting for the world in the area of climate changes. So the data is that the city budget of the city of Skopje in 2017 allocated 1.42% of its money for activities just for mitigation of climate changes. We have activities for adaptation, we have those risks, all the other projects. So this is a very high percentage. So I saw something that I thought I would never experience. So in the end of near the end of my career, the mayor came to me. He entered duty this month. So when we were presenting our budget to him, he listened to everything with his associates and said, for some project, this is not enough money. We should allocate more funds in order to have better results, because environment is the most important thing. Now this is something, you know, how awareness was developing, awareness of people, citizens, users, beneficiaries of the environment, and especially people who are decision makers. And I'm really happy because of this. When it comes to data, it's difficult to access data. Every institution has their own data. Even the official institutions who are obliged to give us data, their answer is, we have data on the level of the state, we do not have data on the city level. This is absurd. The state level data are created from the cities. It's done bottom up, you know. But if everybody is doing the way that we are working, that together with the colleagues from other sectors, everything that we've done, we've mapped everything in the city of Skopje. We integrate the cadastre of the environmental polluters. We have institutions who are working on environmental permits. We have this register of wells. Everything we've done, the survey of the quality of the underground waters, monitoring, everything is set and everything is available to people who want to see this. I just wanted to say something. Yes, but okay, just one more thing. Do we have any cooperation? Yes, we have a lot of cooperation. In addition to UNDP, we cooperate with WHO, with our institutions on the national projects. We work on this, and with all national projects, the city of Skopje is a representative of the local self-government in all action programs of those national projects. We have activities that we implement, so we are really interconnected. But I wanted to say another thing. What you just mentioned. So from my aspect, environment doesn't know administrative boundaries, and that's why City of Skopje, who has 10 municipalities within the city, we have this quasi one level system, but basically we have actually two equal levels. City and municipalities have their own jurisdictions and obligations. In the central city part and in also the rural parts, municipalities have their own responsibilities for their activities. we organize all these municipalities, especially in the area of environmental protection. Even those 7 municipalities in the region, we organize everything we do it for the region. We say which measures to be implemented. We do a lot of work for our poorer municipalities, and we give guidelines to those 7 municipalities which are not under the jurisdiction of the city, where we do not have any right to spend the money, but we are helping them with all the documents. They are covered in everything. They are given the guidelines which project needs to be implemented. That's it for me. I'm sorry.
Hvala vam puno.
Thanks a lot. Skopje and Macedonia are very interesting when it comes to DRR. I think we could have a whole conference on Skopje. I know from first hand, I live and work there. After hearing the experiences of Skopje and Macedonia, let's hear Tirana and Albania. Our next guest is Ms. Susana Yaholari, prefect of Tirana, meaning the head of the district. Ms. Yaholari has academic education in the field of defense and protection, and she has international qualifications. She was part of the armed forces for 33 years, having important command functions, among others, director of inspection services and teacher. Currently, she is head of the Tirana district, and I invite her to share with us her huge experience.
Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored today to present before you the concept and vision of Albania about disaster risk reduction. The countries of Southeast Europe are located in a geographically small area, and as a result, they share the same hazards and disaster risks. In the case of my country, Albania is exposed to hazard of natural origin of the geological, hydrological, atmospheric, and biophysical. This is a result of the geographic position, relief, and the global climate change, which negatively impacts on the natural equilibrium. We are also exposed to man-made technological and industrial hazards. The increasing threat from natural and man-made disasters is among key national security concerns, as stated in the National Security Strategy in Albania. It is approved 2014, and up to now we have prepared National Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction and Civil Protection. It has been prepared, but up to now it isn't approved yet. The adoption of National Strategy of Disaster Risk Reduction and Civil Protection will be an important and foundational step in order to tackle the new challenges posed by disaster risk in the country. To ensure the required cooperation across line ministries and to bring about the required behavioral changes in the Albanian society. Disaster risk management is becoming an important topic for the public agenda in Albania because disasters associated to the impact of natural hazards are costing billions of lakhs to our economy. In order to achieve a safe and resilient Albania for all people to live, work, and visit, every development effort will need to address the risk of disasters, and the civil protection capacities need to be strengthened, including at prefectures and municipality levels. Inadequate emergency preparedness and response leaves communities vulnerable to natural disasters. For this reason, is needed to strong legal and institutional framework and a strong response capability at both national and local levels. The starting point of ensuring preparedness to react to warnings should be at community level. Data and collection of information is very important for responding to preventing disasters, but having only a database is not enough. In order to use the data as efficiently as possible, the information should be elaborated as in maps or graphs. For instance, in Albania, it would be useful to have maps of areas potentially vulnerable to various natural phenomena like rainfall and fires, broadcast on TV during the higher risk season. The periodic broadcast would be a very good way to raise awareness for the population to reduce potential damage. A good example of data collection regarding weather forecasting is through regional cooperation. For example, in March 2015, Albania, as part of a regional EU-IPA project, had its first hydrometeorological radar for severe weather monitoring. The regional project, Italy, Croatia, Albania, set up an integrated radar-based and web-oriented information processing system network to support hydrometeorological monitoring and civil protection decision-making within the Central and Southern Adriatic regions. Awareness campaigns regarding the benefits of early warning systems are critical. As evidenced during both 2010 to 2015 flooding in Albania, despite riskier warnings, it provides very difficult to get people to abandon their dwellings. People are more likely to pay attention and act upon warnings if they have been educated about the risk they face, the nature and meaning of warnings, and have prepared appropriate response plans. Public awareness and education on early warning, together with disaster risk reduction, preparedness and response modules, should consequently find their way and become integral part of school curricula. In relation to dissemination and communication, is necessary the use of multiple communication channels to ensure everyone is reached and to avoid the failure of any channel, as well as to reinforce the warning message. In Albania, the weather warnings produced up to now are disseminated to the public via media, and presently there is no emergency communication system based on 10 European 112 number. The 21st century we are living in can also be considered as the information and digital age. For this reason, we have to support different smart programs, especially in the timely exchange of information in Albania and also in the region. An important role is played by universities and their scientific departments, which through various European projects, the governments or private businesses should promote and encourage students to create programs with an impact in gathering and disseminating information that would help in preventing disasters. Also, the mobile telephony services can be very useful through the use of mobile applications, especially for the real-time warning of the population during an emergency. Many disasters are cross-border in their effects. For example, hot dry weather and droughts or flooding in certain river systems. So there is much to be gained from a regional approach to these disasters. National administration would benefit from closer regional cooperation in disaster risk management and civil protection, from both a technological and organizational point of view. Albania participates in a number of regional cooperation schemes that are contributing significantly to efforts to monitor, forecast, and warn of impending events such as floods, forest fires, as well as exchanging information and knowledge on disaster risk reduction and pooling efforts for training and responding to disasters. The World Risk Report for 2017 lists Albania as the most dangerous country in Europe for natural disasters, with a risk rate of 9.93%. At a global level, Albania ranks among the countries with high economic consequences from disasters. The four main hazards affecting Albania are floods, forest fires, snowstorms, and earthquakes. Other hazards include landslides, drought, temperature extreme, epidemics, technological hazards such as dam bursts and windstorms. Considering the scale of risk, the Albanian government has focused on defining the capacities needed for cases of natural disasters, which consist in the legislative framework, logistic capacities, and human resources. At the local level, prefects and mayors of the municipalities are responsible for planning and coping with civil emergencies. The prefect and mayor establish separately the respective commission of planning and responding to civil emergencies. Their task is to coordinate the activities of their local authorities and voluntary organization for planning for and coping with emergencies. Planning for urban projects of the municipality deal with floods in urban area. Municipalities also have the responsibility to respond to flooding in rural areas in accordance with the 2015 law in local self-governance. Albania has reduced the risk of forest fires through several initiatives. Designation of protected areas, risk fire map, and awareness of the community for clearing urban and forest areas from waste that poses a fire risk. There is also a pilot project of the municipality of Tirana for the establishment of a thermal imaging camera for the protected area of Daiti Mountain. For snowstorms, preparedness and response mostly consist in maintenance of roads, clearing of ice, salt supply, etc. Providing goods, food, and medical supply for the population at risk of isolation. Regarding seismic activity, Albania is characterized by low earthquake activity and rarely by earthquakes of magnitude greater than 7. Application of building codes and standards, the awareness and knowledge of engineers and builders are key factors in this regard. The building codes, Eurocode 8 seismicity, were prepared in 2011 under the World Bank project, but if made effective, they would be applied to new buildings only. Concerning the framework of budgetary provision in case of emergencies, in Albania there are 4 types in place. The emergency budget of the Ministry of Interior, the emergency budgets of local government, reallocated budgets of line ministries, and the Council of Ministers Reserve Fund. The law on the state budget allocates each year a reserve fund at national and local levels. The Council of Ministers is entitled to use this fund in the event of a civil emergency situation, as well as for disaster reduction measures. The increase in investment in the financing of disaster reduction has had positive result in areas such as Leja, a small city in Albania, where flooding used to occur frequently, but currently the level of risk has significantly decreased. Albania, along Serbia and Macedonia, is already participating in a regional catastrophic risk insurance facility, which was launched by the World Bank and other partners in 2010. There are also contributions from parties in the private sector or NGOs, where Albania Red Cross is the main NGO actor in the disaster risk reduction. International donations and support include the World Bank assistance through the Albanian Disaster Risk Mitigation and Adaptation Project, the Land Administration and Management Project, and the Energy Community of Southeast Europe program. In 2013, the German project conducted a gap needs assessment for Drini River Basin Management for establishing as an integrated regional flood early warning system in the Drin-Buna river basin. Also, since 2010, there are 2 towns in Albania. They have joined the UN SDR campaign, the Making Cities Resilient. My city is getting ready. This is the motto. Tirana and Leja. These cities have developed a set of action on disaster risk reduction and conducted several activities in this respect. As a final remark, I would like to put the emphasis on the strong regional cooperation and good faith between our countries, which is a result also of this conference, for it to be easier for everyone to respond to natural and human-induced disasters through working together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jaholari. It was really useful to hear your experiences. Kažu da šećer ostaje.
They say that the sweets are at the end of the course, and these sweets is our Mr. Zdravko Maksimović, head of the Civil Protection of City of Kraljevo. If Sandra Nedeljković is a familiar face on the national level, then Zdravko Maksimović is definitely a person familiar on the local level in civil protection. He's a civil protection enthusiast and an evidence that if there's a will, there's a way. He initiated connecting the local civil governments in the Western Morava Basin and first head of the first section for civil protection in Serbia. And we're talking about the city of Kraljevo. Today, the city of Kraljevo is the city that has the first website about civil protection. And they also have a regional center for training in the area of civil protection. So accordingly, Mr. Maksimović, please. This morning, together with Sandra, he was the star of the N1 television. So please share your experiences with us. Thank you very much. First, I have to apologize if I'm brief. I have to be brief because the people in the hotel will kick me out by 12. Checkout is by noon today, so I'll have to be brief. So I will start today's discussion with one movie that I've seen relatively soon, 2 days ago. It was on the National Geographic. Is that the name of the channel? Yes, on National Geographic. And it is related to climate changes. So since we're talking about the context of climate changes, natural disasters in the context of climate changes, the fact is that in the last 50 years, thanks to humans, thanks to man, the temperatures of the oceans increased for a couple of degrees. I think this is 3 degrees or a bit more. And just by that, the acidity increased of the world's oceans. That first of all, one atmosphere. But it doesn't matter, you know, this context doesn't matter how much we polluted the nature and how much we know to appreciate everything that the natural beauties are. So the next story that I will tell you adds to this. The story about the biggest global scientists when it comes to climate. They say that everything that we've achieved in 50 years, if this stops today, meaning if we continue polluting the atmosphere and environment, we might be able to successfully return to this period before 50 years, but it will take us 10,000 years to go back to this. It will take us 10,000 years to go back to this level 50 years ago when it comes to the condition of when it comes to protection, when it comes to nature, which is, let's say, in this context of natural disasters, and the nature is not doing anything else, just slapping us in the face. Maybe it should have slapped us earlier. So in this context, what we're doing on the territory of the city of Kraljevo is think globally, act locally. And all of this is great. Every conference means a lot, first of all, to us who participate, whether on the national level, whether in scientific institutions, NGO sector, business sector. But when it comes to citizens, when it comes to the natural processes, this requires dedication wherever you are. And this definitely is the local level. Those are unfortunately abandoned regions where 1,000 years ago they were creating a big Serbian state, middle-aged state created by the Nemanjić dynasty, and today in these regions there are almost no villages, people living in those villages, this workforce, this capacity to successfully fight and prevent some disasters. And when I listen about this, when the people say that this is not something that requires maintaining the second level water flows, I will call everybody to be our guests in the city of Kraljevo so that we can try together maybe in a week to visit the entire territory, 1,530 square meters area, where 70% are hill and mountain areas, where you have more than 150 torrential waters, where you have one public enterprise that will probably in the following period will be privatized under the slogan that everything needs to be privatized. So then you are left helpless, but at the same time you are still resolved to be dedicated first of all to people. So first of all to people. This is what we've done. With our citizens, today I can say with the members of the civil protections, with commissioners of civil protection in the territory of the city of Kraljevo, we're trying to find a common language with the nature. To build those bridges that it seems to me we destroyed very easily. And I'm not somebody, regardless of having GIZ. Today in Kraljevo we have the first website. It's important to say no other self-government doesn't have such a website like we managed to create. This is all great. I'm not somebody who believes in modern technologies, meaning that they will save us, but they will save us from what's happening to us. You know, instead of looking at the sky, we're looking at our mobile phones. That seems to be the... It might be possible that the mobile phones and all these smart technologies are actually making us, if I can say this, making us autistic in terms of everything that's happening in our environment. We stopped monitoring the signs from the nature. Landslides are not something that happens momentarily, you know. Nature is sending signals, signs. Soil is starting with erosion, there are some cracks, then I don't know, and then this lasts for years. And then you reach the situation where landslide happens as one point, and then we look at each other and say, okay, no, this is something that has been happening, this was happening in the past. We didn't know how to recognize these processes. We used to know to do this much better. I remember when I was young, when I went to visit my relatives in the village, my grandpa, they were all looking in the sky when they had to do field works. They were looking in the sky whether they should go back home or stay in the field. Today people look at mobile phones, they give you the information, you know. And it's a question how many people are actually working in the fields right now. So that's the biggest problem with Serbia, with the local self-governments. So the human capacities, unfortunately, this negative population flow, so more people dying than being born today in Serbia, this is the biggest threat to us for managing to implement all of this successfully tomorrow. Of course, in all of this, we really received help from the office, from the standing conference. Maybe UNDP helped us the most. This is one man from UNDP, Žarko Petrović. He doesn't like to brag, but I have to point him out because in 2015, when he came to Kraljevo, he said, "Man, you have to share this with others." And I was skeptical because, you know, in Serbia, when people are praising you too much, then people start, you know, scrutinizing you, you know. But in the end, everything turned out all right. And it seems to me that even today, when we have this new Ministry for Environmental Protection, when we are involving the climate changes context, when we are thinking about the law on civil protection, which will definitely confirm that what we are doing is right and appropriate. Now I can say that we really have went a long way, and I would like to thank my colleagues as well, colleagues from other local self-governments, because we in Kraljevo wouldn't have been able to do this on our own. You know, you can invest in one local self-government, you can invest in the city of Skopje, like my colleagues said, but some disasters do not occur there. Their source is not in the city itself, you know. This happens upstream, sometimes maybe even downstream, because those cities do not have the capacities, the local self-governments do not have the capacities to take in all this water. So, but the other thing is that I really think that it's high time, and I'm glad that the state has started thinking about it, thinking in this direction. It's high time that our efforts, our institutions, our investments, to focus them where it is necessary to have them, when it comes to financing and in general working with natural disasters. So basins of great rivers, of big rivers, those are the places. So this is something that we saw in Denmark. But in Denmark things work on the state level, not on the local level. Here we started doing this on the local level, our good experience in Kraljevo. But first of all, we recognized our need to build this, to make us ourselves and our citizens better. But this was also recognized by other cities, 17 cities and municipalities in the Western Morava Basin. And in 2017, on the 10th of February, in addition to 17 cities of the Western Morava Basin, we are happy to say there were 8 cities in the Kolubara River Basin. So on the same day, we signed 2 protocols of cooperation. And I like saying that those are actually our Serbian Sendais. If a future conference should be held about these topics, signing those protocols, agreements, this is Serbia, you know, because we were the first one to manage to sign our local Sendai framework. We started with what they put on the paper. We started working on this on the daily basis. So this is another thing that truly requires creating these resilient societies, resilient local communities in the states in general. So we need dedication to work, dedication to daily work, being present there. You know, I wouldn't be able to do all of these things from my office or from meetings like this, to convince my citizens, you know, people from villages, farmers in the territory of Kraljevo, that Sendai is great, that we need to go back to the civil protection system, etc. No, you have to be present, to be with the citizens, especially with those who need it the most. And to tell them, to convince them on daily basis, to start together with you into a concept of building, in my opinion, something that's the most needed for us, and this is civil protection, because civil protection covers all the elements of the society: state, local, national, local administrations, private sector, citizens, schools, kindergartens, everything that's necessary, that needs to be a part of this story. At the very end, how to create a resilient community. We will never be resilient. Let's start from this premise. Let's start from this fact that we will never be resilient in terms of our capacities. And we will have some room for future work. We can be more resilient, but we can never be resilient, because if you start fighting nature, you will lose this fight. there were books written about this. A lot of people talked about the smart people, and I wouldn't like to cite the Hammurabi Law or Hemingway, who is a Nobel laureate. So he described this struggle and this fight between the man and the nature. But to us, and I would like to agree with what my colleagues said, we really need much more brains. And what we need much more than these brains and knowledge, like Edison would say, we need dedication and work. So work, work, and work. That's why I like to say that I'm a pioneer in all of this, because I'm really dedicated every day to this idea that on the territory of the entire Western Mora Basin tomorrow we have a unified civil protection that could be able to respond to all tomorrow's requests. Thank you.
Hvala što si...
Thank you for being brief. Thanks to all speakers. We were late at the beginning, some 15 minutes, so I think we have some more time for questions and discussion. The media corner can wait for some 15 minutes. So now it is your time. Please ask your questions. And when doing so, please stand up and introduce yourself. We are having a live stream, so please do it that way. Like yesterday, for the beginning, maybe we can start in groups of 3 questions. I come from the Center for Green Economy from Serbia. Inspiration is here, and I'm asking Mr. Mladenovic whether Belgrade has capacities to propose the law on civil protection. Can you be the proposing entity for this law? And do you believe that in this set of the law that you mentioned is being developed, the law on civil protection would be a lex specialis, which needs to regulate civil protection issues, which needs to deal with other safety issues, like, for instance, Convention of Atomic Security, not only climate change and DRR. I was the last commander for the regional center in Niš, and my task was to mobilize and prepare members of youth work campaigns within specialized units of general purpose. At that time, I managed tools, at that time manual tools mostly, for interventions in areas that are practically not populated, but there are erosions, flash floods, unforested land, and even back then there was some elderly population. This is just a small example. And with this, I would close with this question, but I would like to hear from you. Do we have this capacity to have institutionally structured, missing parts of this puzzle through the law? Ljuban Tmušić from Montenegro. Question for Mr. Mladenovic. You said some very good statements, but I want to see whether this is that you are just well prepared or that you can actually answer substantive questions. The number of people in the Center for Emergencies in Belgrade, how many do you have without firefighting and rescue teams? I just like to know, in case that we do something similar in Montenegro. You mentioned the commissioners. Where are they? In which companies? Is this volunteering or professional approach? So this is very important part of the previous system as well. There was always person in charge. And thirdly, you mentioned acoustic studies. Can you tell me how much such a study would cost? For instance, in one of the city municipalities the size of approximately 200,000 or 300,000 population, so that I can make a comparison with Podgorica. For those who were not here yesterday, I am Sonja Pavlović, MP in the National Assembly of Serbia. But more importantly for this topic here is that I've been active in water management for 30 years, and water management and environment are, for me, the key topics that I've dealt with. I thank all the panelists for sharing their experiences with me. When I hear Mr. Maksimovic, I start hoping that there is hope for Mr. Mladenovic. I have a question as a citizen of Belgrade. I remember, I'm old enough to remember the system that Yugoslavia used to have and how it operated. I remember we had a school subject, a school course also. So at that time, it was a fragmented system with many smaller units of civil protection. Belgrade municipalities are very big. There was talk at some time in the past that the number and the size and the structure may even change. So, for instance, to have Kaluđerica or some others, Kaluđerica, Krnjača, and some others along the Danube River. Do you think, and how do you think the big municipalities of Belgrade will implement this system? I suppose that the strategy will answer these questions. And do you think that for these specific reasons, it would be possibly necessary to have new municipalities established in Belgrade, which in terms of population and in terms of territory can truly operate as new municipalities in Belgrade? Thank you very much.
Da, ja imam više pitanja.
Well, several questions for me. Thank you for all the questions anyway, but let's start from the first one. I will be quick, meaning I want to give my colleagues time to answer as well. When it comes to the first question, do we have the capacities? Well, I have to tell you that we do have, but they are external capacities. We have people joining us who have experience, who used to be in the system, and thanks to this experience and knowledge, we have more capacities than compared to the realistic state in the administration itself. So to be direct, I think that this is not just the thing of one civil government. The law on civil protection, the law that is being prepared right now, which will cover civil protection, but is not actually the law on civil protection. We participating, public debate is ongoing about this new law that should be adopted on law on protection and rescue. And I hope that we will reach solutions which are satisfactory both for the central and for the local level. So we finally have an interaction, meaning two-way communication, which is a good thing. So I hope that when it comes to civil protection, we will reach a law that will be on the republic level, and that we from the local civil governments, especially Mr. Maksimovic, has good experience with this, and he's a pioneer. I will not say a proletarian, but pioneer definitely in this. And we take those experiences, we share those experiences among ourselves, and we are working on this when it comes to the civil protection system in our capital. In line with the laws and legislations, we started implementing these by organizing units of civil protections of general purpose. This is under jurisdiction of the local civil governments, and I have to say that this is still just on paper right now. I would have been happy to say that these units are equipped, that we start with direct trainings, and that we could say that we have a squad who will in 2 to 3 hours, in 10 hours be at a certain site and work on and take some measures, tasks. So we are still in the phase of organizing this in the formal sense, organizing the units of civil protection for general purpose and commissioners. So from the city municipalities, we received commissioners by local communities. These commissioners are actually our coordinators of activities on the ground. We will have to, this is a plan for 2018, we will have to work on training the commissioners. And this way we will create this organization which will be a top-down organization. We will lower it to the lower level. I apologize to my colleague from Montenegro because this is the similar topics. When it comes to the territory of Belgrade and the new Belgrade municipalities, I'm one of those people who really advocate for having new municipalities. This is not an easy process. It's expensive. You're always in the position that the new structures of the governments in this 4-year mandate doesn't have the time to start with this. Just changing the statute of the city of Belgrade, when you start with this change, it takes 2 years, public debate and everything else. So the statute needs to change. There are needs. We have two big municipalities. New Belgrade, 200,000. Palilula, I think, is the third or fourth municipality in Serbia by size. I would not like to bore you with the figures and with those problems, and this will definitely happen. This is something that will happen. We now feel this problem from the old system that we are now using, and which is not adequate, because we inherited this organization of municipalities from the previous period. We inherited all the jurisdictions, etc. Our reorganization needs to happen. I hope that this will happen as soon as possible so that we can function better. When it comes to the number of people in the system itself, we have now established a secretariat dealing with protection and defense, civil protection, and all those tasks concerning protection and rescue. But it has been added to an office for communication with citizens. So this is to a call center which has already been operational through this Belcom service. That's how we call it in Belgrade. So we created an interlinked system actually. Maybe this is not the best solution, but this year in 2017 and next year we will try to see how this works. Belcom system is actually our attempt of having something like 112 system, but this is not the same. This is just municipal problems. This doesn't include the police and the emergency services and the firefighters, but includes all the other problems that we have in the territory of the city of Belgrade, and which are sent to one center which distributes this according to the competent units in the city. 3 employees on this task, and that's not enough. Not enough. With people who are still with the service contracts, we are aware of that. Now we have this bigger secretariat, we have more employees in the secretariat, so it wouldn't be fine to tell you that we have 50 employees because they're not working on these tasks. So 3 people actually in reality working exclusively on these tasks. When it comes to the acoustics study, it was done for the territory of entire Belgrade. So I can give you these figures, how much this cost, about the cost, about the public invitation, about it. I can send you actually everything that we've done in terms of reference. That's not a problem. This is an extremely important strategic document. We are in the position where I told you how this system worked, especially after the NATO aggression in 1999. So 114 sites in Belgrade with the sirens. And this acoustic study has shown that we need 317 sirens. You see the difference. 3 times as many locations. The city is expanding. There's need for new locations. The system was not expanding. So without this acoustic study, we were not able to start with projecting. The projecting started immediately after the study. It's still ongoing, and I'm hoping that by the beginning of 2018 we will finish this project, and then we will start. Yes, Žarko is nodding because we're doing this together with UNDP. And then we will start with equipping. According to assessment, the value is between 5 and 7 million euros. So just to have to be clear how big, how expensive, how important this project is, and this is high on our agenda as one of the most important projects for us. And I think that's it. I cannot hear this. I'm sorry. No. Volunteers. People delegated by the city municipalities, by the local communities, volunteers. it's impossible really to do this. But you also asked this concerning all of us organizations. We continued. We didn't just work on this territorial approach that this lady asked about concerning this capillary approach by local communities. All our institutions, public enterprises, they all receive these tasks. Almost all of them work on this. Some of them do their own threats assessments, plans for rescue and protection. We want them to have this in their budget. Believe me, this is something that they're not familiar with. Most of them ask us, why do we need this? Why are we doing this now? Where to find these people, etc., etc. You know, those are the problems where you have to involve all the institutions. You know, Belgrade has, I don't know, 35 institutions of culture. So we have to address them. We have to turn them, not to talk about the public utility enterprises, hospitals, public primary healthcare centers. This is a huge system, and everybody got this task. We're monitoring. We're working with them to establish this system, which will only become completely operational in a couple of years. So only then we will be able to start working, maybe do a big exercise or something. But this is something that's still ahead of us. Thank you. Just a couple of things before I answer to your questions. Maybe these things will actually be the answers to your questions. Because what I want to say concerns this commissioners system, network of commissioners and deputy commissioners. It is governed by the law in Serbia. But what's extremely important and what Andrea mentioned are those trainings actually. What's the idea? What was crucial for our success? Crucial for our success was that we really did those trainings as trainings, which lasted for 2, 3 or more days, where we took people 100 kilometers from the city center. We didn't organize these trainings in hotels where they would drink coffee, go out in the garden, you know, no. But 100 kilometers from the city center, they all came back home. Yes, they all came back home. They didn't get they didn't get any money for this. But what's important, they came by their cars. Believe me, sir, this means a lot. But why? Because when everything is paid for you, probably most of you will agree to do anything. But commissioners for civil protection are people who are first in this, in the first lines, you know, who will tomorrow be the first ones to serve in mobilizing, evacuation, everything else. If you're not ready, you know, to travel 100 kilometers for 2 or 3 days to participate in work, how will you be ready then to wake up at night? You know, by definition, natural disasters happen at night, 2 a.m. So how will you be able to get up when I call you or when somebody else calls you from the situation center and to start with evacuation and informing the population? That's how we recognize the resolvedness of the citizens to participate in this process. So we're talking about this network of commissioners. After that, they had the task to find their citizens, to find their neighbors, relatives and friends who would participate in the units for civil protections for general purpose. And this went well. It could have gone otherwise, you know. They had the opportunity just not to talk to me because I represent a city or a public institution. But we had a good response because nature was on our side, because disasters happened before this. Related to this, I cannot hear the question, I'm sorry. No, they were on our side. They were on our side. Definitely. Nature was on my side. I didn't have to convince people. I could have just told him, wait for the spring and you will see. Let's wait for the next spring. Let's wait for this winter and you will see. If you don't want to participate, if you want to wait from the machinery from Kraljevo to go 100 kilometers, just wait. Yes? It's not a problem. That's your risk. Wait. On the other hand, what's important, and I really had support in the city, but also thanks to nature, thanks to the earthquake in 2010 and then fires, landslides, everything else that happened to us. So we were the first city in Serbia who, because you know I work in the municipality. I'm a municipal official. So they called our services Department for Civil Protection Services. They called our department with the real name. Emergency is just one situation that can happen. just one thing that can occur. It doesn't have to occur. And we really should turn to civil protection. And that's a good message. And not just that, but the city councilman in the city council, 12 members, each of them has one task: civil protection area. Our documents that are adopted by the local parliament, they were adopted unanimously by the government and by the opposition. So civil protection is not something where we will argue. Nature is not something that we will have different, I don't know, opinions or whatever. These are truly things that should unify us. And related to this, they can really be developmental, as gentleman said. Unfortunately, in the past, we had to have a lot of those public works, working actions where young people were participating in some processes. By the way, the best thing that happened to us in Kraljevo, it's not that we started the civil protection, I don't know, but after the floods in 2014, but the best thing is that we established the association called Ora Kraljevo. They even connected with the Macedonians. They successfully organized 3 labor actions. Those are children, you know. We're not talking about people who remember Tito, I don't know, this system. We're talking about young people who have no idea what we used to do in the past. And today they cooperate. They visited Macedonia after the floods that happened in Macedonia. They organized themselves and went to Macedonia. And in addition to all of this, I want to tell you that our trainings that we implemented on Rudno, 100 kilometers from the city center, but you're still in the city of Kraljevo, this costed 0 dinners to the city budget. If I tell you this, you wouldn't believe me, but yes, they didn't cost anything, because the local businesses recognized the importance of financing something like this, and private companies finance this. Mostly small family-owned companies, they financed our trainings primarily for food, because you know this is 100 kilometers from the city, so it's possible to do it. It's just important who is working on this, whether those are people who first of all people and institutions trust, and then you can work miracles. If you just sit in the office and wait for a miracle to happen, yes, it will happen to you. It will happen to you.
Thank you, Zdravko, and thank you, everybody. Is this time for lunch or more questions before the final wrap-up? More questions. Thank you. Let me first thank the organizers for this opportunity to hear what was presented here. I come from the Faculty of Security, thanks to UNDP who invited me. And I would like to say a few words about the company that I work for that is funded by the state. Our faculty qualifies people for work in this area. Many were saying here the necessary things, but the emphasis was on multi-sectoral approach. In our faculty, we have a multidisciplinary approach to educating our students. They acquire knowledge in law, healthcare system, in economics, psychology, and these are the people that will be needed at local level to maybe act as coordinators of what needs to be done, who can link experts from different areas, who can identify the problem, like we heard from a former No, he wasn't a specialist in security. He was specialist in mining. He first destroyed the nature, then he's saving it. But in any case, we've heard here some people who graduated from our faculty, our colleague among them from Podgorica. So with this, I just wanted to appeal to you to engage our students once they graduate and try to use this valuable resource that the state invested in. And I hope it would be a pity to waste this resource, our graduates. No more questions. If I may, this is very important that we heard. When you are working in local governments, salaries for university graduates are 40,000 dinars. Secondly, we now have prohibited new employment in local governments. We are discussing downsizing or right-sizing, not increasing the number of staff. So these are the challenges that local administrations are facing, while, on the other hand, we want to be creative and innovative and engage the public. So these are very difficult things, really, to do at local level. And yes, we will need the national level to better recognize our needs when it comes to further developing the civil protection system. Another question, and then we will have to close and wrap up. Good day. I am president of the environmental movement LIM from Priboj. I was invited on behalf of the civil society sector. I wanted to tell you about what we are facing as civil society organizations active in our communities where we live. Namely, in Serbia, in past 10 years, there's much going on in terms of building micro hydropower plants, and many try to do it in a lawful way, but still there are investors who wish to generate profits as soon as possible, which is quite legitimate. But the problem is when these permits are issued and the projects are constructed, specifically in Priboj on the Lim River, which is a river of international character. The others are not cross-border rivers. We tried very much to prevent this construction because on Lim we already have one 7 kilometers upstream from the city center. Now there is a second one being constructed 1.4 kilometers upstream from the city center. A completely new situation. It took us 4 years at local level, citizens, to lobby, to fight, to prevent this from happening. However, national authorities allowed this and issued the permits. Another thing, 500 meters from this, there is a factory for assembly of trucks and vehicles. So this will be a facility used to assemble and build military trucks for the Serbian army. So yes, here we are discussing DRR, resilience, and then we see at some local levels some very difficult situations. I don't want to tell you now details about the river Lim, the only river that has erosion problems, landslides, flash floods, and this power plant potpatch that has been constructed aimed to stop these sediments from coming, to protect the Peručac power plants. Older generations know this, but I wanted, with telling you this, to raise your awareness of this challenge that we see at local level. Thank you for your comment. In the end, I'd like to ask each panelist in only a couple of sentences to give us either some response to the comments or some wrap-up for the session. Briefly, about the civil protection law. The emergency law and the DRR law have established, regulated the two-level civil protection, civil, specialized and general purpose at national and local level. So as far as I know, there are no plans to develop a new civil protection law. But what needs to be done is guidelines and instructions, because there is need also to develop bylaws for implementation. So possibly a rule book should be done as to how to establish civil protection at local level, because I've noticed that in municipalities, people understand it in different ways, have different approaches of how to organize the civil protection networks. So I see that as a need for the future to regulate it in a more detailed manner through a bylaw, not a law, because it is easier as needs change, to change the bylaws, because these need to be active and live documents which can more easily be changed and harmonized with the needs of times. As for other comments, I think we do need to work together. We do need an integrated approach. We need to have together the national and the local level. So for all of this, we need to sit together at a table and do our planning jointly, because we cannot have preventive measures in one sector without knowing what has been done in a different sector, because many of these things are interlinked. Like you mentioned with the hydropower plant, we need environment, water management, energy, and other sectors to sit down and work together for these cross-cutting issues. Communication, coordination, context for us to sit down and work together is the essence of what we need.
Thank you. You know what, it's difficult to give a specific conclusion. Those are good opportunities to exchange information, experiences, to get to know each other. But what remains when we go back to our cities and municipalities is a hard work and persistence to bring what started to an end. We shouldn't allow to be in a situation once again where we cannot respond to. Belgrade is a capital of Serbia, has this type of responsibility to by its acting to influence the functioning of the entire state. That's how we see it. But in a way, sometimes we see that we are alone, and what we're doing, as my colleague Maksinic was said, we are pioneers maybe in this, because it's expected that something is done on the local self-government level, but this is the task of the state, a task for all of us. But those are now some problems. I do not want to end this session with complaining. A lot of work ahead of us. And definitely the experiences that we could hear today would mean a lot to us, from Skopje, from Tirana, from other cities that are here. So in this way we could work on being even better, even of higher quality, and to have this resilience in the right sense of this word in our cities. So I promise, if we have the chance to see each other again next year, I promise that Belgrade will definitely have some more things to brag about, to say that we completed some of the things that we mentioned today. And I think that this progress, it's important that every day we finish one part of the work. But we will definitely never be over with it. But we should always work on being even better with the challenges ahead of us in the future. Thank you. I would just like to briefly say that I heard a lot of new information which are outside the scope of my work. I got some ideas, and I'm really pleased that I heard all of this. But I will not be discussing this, because this is not my field of expertise. I don't want to discuss something that I'm not working on, but I'm glad to have heard this, and I will transfer some of the experiences to the city, to other sectors, to my sectors. But I would just like to highlight, and I'm glad that Mr. Maksimovic said this, so I would like to put it this way. You can establish a lovely system. You can have all the strategies. You can establish cooperation and everything. But if you do not have people dedicated to their work, with their personal approach, this will not yield effects. It's really important for me, and I always say that this approach, this dedication to your work is the only precondition and readiness for work. This out beyond your task, official tasks. This is the crucial thing for reaching what you want to have as a good product, good final end product. This was it. That's it for me. Thank you.
The aim of the conference is investment into development needs to be smarter than any other moment in history. It means that investing in resilience reduces the cost of recovery in case of natural or human disaster. The countries of Southeast Europe are located in geographically small area and thus generally share the same hazards and disaster risks. So we will cooperate and would benefit from closer regional cooperation in disaster risk management and civil protection, both technologically and organizationally. I think, and it is, I strongly believe that is based on studies that not only Albania, that it is a small country, but every country, when faced with big hazards, it's very, very difficult to act alone. And so the message is we have to cooperate together and to work together and to finalize with the success this duty. Thank you.
I like telling my colleagues in other local self-governments when we're in meetings together, so if you wanted a nice work, 9 to 5, with breaks, working with a smile on your face, then you should have been working, as a government officials, This topic requires dedication, day and night. And really, there is no universal solution. There's no equation which will solve resilience, which you can use to reach a level when we will truly be resilient. This depends on many factors. But the most important factor in all of this is human factor. So accordingly, I would like just to tell everybody, and to tell myself primarily, that in the next period we have a lot of work ahead of us, personal work, meaning personal education, personal trainings, and then expanding, sharing the knowledge, sharing the experiences in this work of ours. That was it. Thank you. Thank you all. I think you will all agree that we chose the right panelists for this topic. So a general conclusion at the very end for this session. DRR, connecting DRR is a long-term process. There are mistakes, rises and falls, but Serbia in any way is on the right path. Connecting the basins, Western Morava, Kolubara, networks of commissioners are examples of positive practice that will definitely strengthen human resources capacities and lead to the increase of the DRR financing. In addition to that, it's important to speak about these topics. Crucial role is played by the conferences such as this one. So, I, as somebody who's coming from the outside, and I am leading a regional UNDP's DRR project for the entire Balkans, I can say that Serbia, maybe it doesn't seem to you this way, but I can think that Serbia is a regional leader for DRR connection. So, well done, just continue doing this. Thank you all, and with this I would like to conclude this session. Have a pleasant lunch.